Welcome everyone. So nice to see you all. Lisa's going to stay, and Mark, this is your last one before you leave. And so, but I asked Lisa if she'd lead us in the meditation. You're staying.
I'm staying.
Okay. Good. So we're doing the third, fourth, and fifth steps on the Eightfold Path today. Lisa, lead us into it.
Everybody just close your eyes and take 3 long, deep, clearing breaths, exhaling the agitation from arriving and socializing and landing in your body, in your seat, just present in this moment. Let's turn our sense doors inward, as if we're sort of closing doors to the outside so that we can turn our focus inside. Being aware of the sensations within the body. What's the feeling of your breath? All the parts that move in relation to it. Becoming aware of gravity and its relationship with your body. Where things feel heavier or rooted, things maybe feel lighter, or even disconnected, noticing if there's extra spaciousness. Taking that very distant observer of your mind, noticing simply how present it is or isn't. Letting that observer move towards the perception or the residing in your inner beingness. Often described as feeling like it's right in the core of yourself. Place of peacefulness, place that's very settled, place that doesn't ask questions. It is perfectly content in being. So the practice is to just bringing ourselves back to that place.
was a girl named Goldilocks. She visited a house of 3 bears. She tried 3 beds. One too hard, one too soft, or too big or little, depends on your version of the story, and one just right. It's very Buddhist story that we teach children about equanimity, that the answers are found somehow in a middle way, which is what the Dharma teaches, a wide middle way. So we have been studying the basics of Buddhism, and embedded every time is that idea, that the answer is somehow found in the middle. That there's suffering in life. We suffer because of things that we get trained into doing. We have a way out of that through detachment. And then the Buddha taught about the Eightfold Path, of which we've done right view and right intention. If you're not used to that, it's always up on the board, which is great. Today we're going to be at 3 o'clock, 4:30, and 6 o'clock. So right speech, right action, right livelihood or vocation. The answer in each of these sections of these 3 ethical teachings of the Buddha is found in the middle. That's why I wanted to start with the Goldilocks idea. The good thing about the way that the Buddha taught is that it was prescriptive. It was suggestions on how to live more peacefully, happily, in harmony. And there's much of religious teaching that's proscriptive. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, to keep you away from your supposed evil nature. The Buddhists start very differently, and that they say that any... Oh, I thought it was mine, sorry. It's okay. The Buddhists teach it very differently in that they say that some of the evil things that we might feel, act on, or participate in are learned. We learn them over time, and the job of enlightenment is to unlearn, not pick up other bad habits along the way, and to create good. Over and over in these 3 teachings is the idea of renunciation, leaving something behind to create space. Not doing harm. In other words, staying away from new bad habits that will be waiting, and then do good, which is creating new pathways, new neural pathways, new behavioral pathways. So these 3 are really, really practical, the most down to earth of the 8. Right speech, right action, right vocation. I'm using the word vocation instead of livelihood because it probably makes a little more sense currently. That idea is really sound when you think about it. You have to make space for something else to appear. And not everything that appears is wholesome, skillful, good. So you have to be discerning at that point. And then in the process of observing and evaluating things, you have the chance to do good. Leave behind, not choose the next set of negatives, and do what's good. If we taught kids this in the playground, and we kind of do, it'd be a different world. If we acted this way, it would be a different world. And yet we often get stuck in our training, in something new that we might try but it has bad results, or in the experiment with what does real goodness look like. How do you keep your ship upright in all that, which is what the Eightfold Path talks about. So let's start with right speech. I could easily go off on all kinds of things that I have learned about right speech, and I've done these before, and we're not going to do them today. How to talk in ways that people will understand you, and you will understand them. I keep this nearby my therapy desk because if ever I do couples work, I inevitably am like, see on the screen? This is how it's done well. I'm not going to teach this today because I want to really get to the Buddha's teachings about what that is. There's so much about communication and speech that's available to you. If you struggle with speaking honestly and in a way that others can hear, or if you have difficulty receiving the influence and listening to others, read those books. They're great. And they fit within the range of this. But the Buddha talked about it as a moral discipline. That we might discipline using our words for nourishment rather than poison. That's a regular motif that he plays. Whether what we say and how we listen is nourishing, enriching, or whether it causes problems. The world is full of problematic speech and listening. So you have to ignore all of that to get to this. You have to renounce all of that because those are incredibly bad habits that we have gotten ourselves into as a world and individually. So right speech as nourishment, what does that mean? That you speak so it's useful. If it's not useful in the current moment, don't speak. 2, that it's beneficial. Somebody will benefit by us opening our mouth. If not, we should close our mouth. 3, is it skillful? Useful, beneficial, skillful. The Buddha was straightforward and he said, if it is not, it is better to be silent. Are you good at stopping yourself and being silent when you're not being useful, beneficial, or skillful? If you are, you're on this path. If you're not, probably some work to do. I always have work to do on this path. I was trained in unhealthy speaking. So it's always available if I don't renounce it. If I don't say, I'm not going to be part of that idle chatter. Yeah.
Someone in my family, I don't remember who, used to say, you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything.
Exactly.
And it reminds me of that, but now I'm thinking, if you don't have anything Buddhist to say, don't say anything. Right?
I think a caution would be careful. We should be careful in what we say. We should be thoughtful. We should take our time. And many times we should edit and filter.
That's my problem. You just come out before you.
Well,
And the older you
there's
get, the harder that becomes.
now that you know the problem,
Good conclusion.
here's some ideas for you.
I found those really helpful because, believe it or not, I like to talk.
Really?
But what I found was how important is what I'm saying. Like, that using the word contribute really makes sense. Am I offering something that is beneficial, or am I just loosening my jaw and making sounds? And it helps me filter properly.
I find sometimes that I think I'm saying something that will help someone, then I realize partway through that maybe they didn't want to or weren't ready to listen. And so I'm being opinionated.
Yeah.
So I have to stop myself.
One of the skills is, instead of stumbling into territory, that we do a pretty good job of observing the situation, ourselves, and a little bit of an analysis. Am I, like one of the things that I'm regularly ask myself is, am I really just speaking to myself here? At that point, why am I talking? I already know what this is. Why am I giving that to someone else? So I think a lot of this has to do with timing. That we give ourselves the time to filter, to edit, to be beneficial, to be skillful, to choose our words carefully.
As well, some people have a conditioning not to have space. Right? Just all the time has to be filled with talking. And so to work on being comfortable with some silence, some pauses.
Yes. When you're not used to it, it's uncomfortable. But it's out of the pauses and out of the gaps, as the Buddhists talk about. It's out of that the real wisdom arises. It's not out of the chatter, it's out of the silence that the real rich things come. So the Buddha was asked, what is right speech? Nice, big, straightforward question. He was teaching this, and they said, what is right speech? And he said that there are 4 things, and they are actually, in his first thing, they are prescriptive. They are what not to do. Abstain from lying and partial truths. There's a tricky one, especially when you get to the partial truths. 2, abstain from divisive speech.
What was that? I'm sorry?
Abstain from divisive speech. Abstain from abusive speech. Abstain from idle chatter. I always think of idle chatter as our modern word gossip. Not that we can't have light-hearted, superficial conversations sometimes, but I think this idle chatter gets into the idea that we're telling somebody else's story in our version for some odd reason that we think we understand, but we might not actually really understand. Thich Nhat Hanh put these in a prescriptive way. These 4: abstaining from lying, divisive speech, abusive speech, idle chatter. So these are a prescription for doing it well, not just staying away from what is wrong. 1, speak the truth. 2, speak things that lead to harmony and goodwill. 3, speak with respect. 4, speak with editing. We have two ears and one mouth, so let's talk about the ears for a moment. By the way, physiologically, maybe we should be listening twice as much as talking. For those of us who are talkers, Mark, it could work. Not just you, I mean as well. Two ears, one mouth. And so, if we're going to communicate, speech, the way that the Buddha talked about it here, was indeed also about absorbing the influence of someone else. Listening. Understanding someone else. That is equally important to choosing the right grammar with which to use your words. One of the skills in the communication workbook, if you're used to starting conversations, ask somebody else to start. It throws the whole negative balance off about how your conversations can go into divisive, abusive, non-communicative ways. So this idea of listening, the Buddha didn't talk about empathy, but I will for a minute. When you listen, it has nothing to do with you. If you're going to purely listen, it has nothing to do with you. Lynn, you and I know this from our work, right? If we're going to truly listen, it doesn't have anything to do with us. It has everything to do with what the other person is trying to help us to understand. That means we really have to pull ourselves back from our own thinking, from our own processing that what will I be saying? What's my response? It's not time for that. It's time to sit and know somebody else's truth. If you do that, people will talk to you. Isn't that amazing? They really think that you listen to understand them. They'll talk to you. If they think you listen so that you can get the upper hand next, they won't talk to you. You won't understand them, and they won't really want to understand you either. So this whole area about right speech is about the flavor with which we communicate. The intentions, the practices, the moving from habitual patterns that do not serve us or others well, and how to replace those with our skillful observing and evaluations into something that does good for us, does good for others, creates harmony, creates understanding, creates a more enlightened relationship between us and others. Really practical stuff, isn't it? So if we're going to go to that renunciation part of this, I'm going to stop here before we go to the next one, and let's talk for a minute. If there's some patterns you need to leave behind, and also the process of taking your time to make sure that you're doing good, that you're not going to do harm, and that you're going to do good with what you say and how you listen, where are your challenges in this? Two people have said some already. This is good, basic, foundational material about right speech. Yeah.
I love what you just said, what everybody can understand.
Good.
Well, I'm going to be selfish here, and I'm going to talk about when there's somebody very important in your life, and you want them to listen, and they don't know how to listen, because people, they're very nice people, but all they want to do is give you answers.
Yeah, solving
But-
problems.
and this is what you're saying that we shouldn't do. We should do it because you don't own it. They don't own it. But how can the person that's trying to express their feeling be understood?
You could just preface it with saying,
I'm
I
sorry?
just need you to listen. Just
Yeah.
ask them to
You
just
ask for
listen.
what you're looking for.
Don't need it fixing.
That doesn't mean they're going to do it.
I know.
If you think that's the magic wand, it's only one of many small magic wands. Lynn.
I was going to say you could practice one of the basic communication skills, which is reflective listening. So you ask that person to reflect back to you what their understanding was of what you just said and the sentiment expressed.
I like that. Thank you.
That's
There's a
not
tool.
easy for some people. No.
So sorry I flipped your question.
No, you don't have to be sorry about that at all. You're giving us real life circumstances that we're all like, oh, I know that person.
We all know that.
I am that person.
If you don't know
I
that
have one that
person,
came
you are
right
that
to mind.
person.
And you want to know that the only other thing, and this is really from 12-step work, and that is you're really only in charge of what you do. And,
She's
and-
like,
oh, I hate that.
Try.
And so you just do the next good thing. You do the next right thing. It's not easy because we also keep score, and we're challenged to not keep score. John.
Yeah, I sort of think you need some tools to do this because when you're on the receiving end of somebody saying something provocative, your immediate instinct is to strike back or
It is.
do it. And you have to, and you can't just be silent in a case like that. So I find that one of the tricks I use is when I'm in that situation, I just say, ask a question. And usually the question is, well, that's interesting, where are you getting that from? What's your source?
right.
Right.
And that slows everything down and allows you to get a better understanding of what they're trying to tell you. And maybe have a chance to say, well, maybe I heard that wrong. Maybe they're going to tell me a source that, is questionable. I say, well, why do you rely on that source? So, and try to get an understanding where they're coming from. So it's a little trick, like you have to trick yourself into not responding in kind.
You do. You have to gain self-discipline, which is the very first thing that the Buddha said about this area, is that this is a disciplined area. If you can discipline yourself on that, just that one idea, you have a better chance. You certainly will have a good chance of understanding that person better because you asked the next question. And when you said that, you're asking for something deeper. Where did you get that from? Rather than what is it? You're asking, where do you get that from? Now you're trying to operate at a real deeper understanding. It's a nice choice.
Well, in my quest to more deeply understand, I could use some help understanding. Well, in Dharma speak, we go with the poison and antidote. You're presenting poisons and antidotes. Okay,
yes.
so if divisive speech is the poison and the antidote is, I think you mentioned respect. Does that mean I understand respect? I don't understand the divisive speech. So does that mean it's disrespectful speech? If it's respect, I don't understand divisive.
If divisive speech are like two ships passing in the night.
Okay.
What you've done is you've created a greater space between these two, let's say, ideas. And so, if you're going to do this kind of enriched speech, nourishing speech is how he said it. If you're going to do that, it's about bringing the people closer, not to the same idea, but closer in their understanding. And so divisive speech moves into that dualism that Ruthie often talked about. I'm here, you're there, we're not the same. Buddhism is always about we're closer to the same than what you think. We're operating from the same sphere. I don't know if you've had those kind of conversations where when you really understood someone, let's say in a more controversial, let's say they have a different religious bent than you. And when you really work at this kind of nourishing, non-divisive understanding, even though you might not see it, how they see it, you've brought yourself closer to them. You've not created, if your speech creates greater division, then it's something to avoid. I bet you plenty of you avoid religious and political conversations.
Okay.
That's within range of what this is talking about. That is not nourishing in this climate.
So you're saying it's better to engage.
It's better
In
to try
discussion.
to understand. If someone thinks differently than you
Yeah.
or sees the world differently than you, to work from a point of I'm not going to operate from me, but I'm going to try to understand you. I mean, you could take any controversial subject, Sandy, and if you did that, and you communicated well about it, you might not agree at the end, but you'll be closer. I used to do this thing, and I would put hot topics on the board and train them in this back and forth communication for 1 hour, and then the next hour I'd be like, find a partner. First topic, abortion. Okay, talk to understand each other. Talk to understand each other. Just stay with, and if you don't agree, it's okay. And at the end of it, the only goal is to understand each other. And when you do that, people are brought closer, even though they're not fully in agreement with each other. Now that you created what the Buddha talks about, nourishment, you've both grown from the experience. Non-divisive. Does that help?
Yeah.
Agree. Yeah.
You're wrong, I'm right, divisive.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's
If
really
we come back, you were talking in right speech and hearing, and to answer to what you were saying, when you're talking to somebody who's just not going to listen, one of the things that I found helpful is, am I trying to change them? Because if I'm going to try and change something, they're not going to listen. Because they're often ensconced in their way of seeing something, and they're just not approachable. So I review and this is only through my personal experience, I review how important is it that I need to share this? What do I hope to achieve? What is the benefit? As you were saying earlier, what do I hope to benefit? How is this person going to benefit in what I have to say? And I keep it short as possible, like I just did.
Well,
Yeah,
to
I
your
know you
point,
wanted to give an answer.
that's okay. To Mark's point about that, the monks do in training is to take the other person's point of view, and they argue that point of view to help them understand. But on another thought, something I've noticed, and this applies, I guess, maybe a little bit more to couples. Something I've noticed with Mac not being here, and noticing when stressful situations come up, a habit I would have is to not attack, I won't say attack, but be expressive about how difficult it is, what it is, and looking for answers to him. When really, he's not here now, and these stressful situations come up, and I've really noticed that I don't need to do that. I can find that in myself, and so that speech where it can turn into an argument or some weirdness, really can be avoided. And so it's just an observation that I've made, and it really has made me just reflect. And so hopefully, and it has, just in our communications, really smooth things out so that we have a more even and less stressful communications because we can.
One of the reasons for couples being together is to learn the art of negotiation and compromise.
Yeah.
If you don't want to learn those, you should never be in a couple.
That's my thing is as well.
You know, it's one of the beautiful gifts of that, because those are really good words. But yeah, but it's also challenging. So we have to leave some of that combative competitiveness, some of the poison of all that behind. We have to work towards harmony and understanding.
Yeah, and really reflect what you're trying to communicate in
Yeah.
that situation.
Yeah.
Like, what is it that you're really wanting to do, or to say, to communicate? What is that? Giving it away, giving that problem away, or, it's really made me consider what that's about. And anyway, very useful to have that distance
Yeah,
to
yeah.
reflect.
Good. Awesome. Pam, did you want to say something?
No, it's
before
not
we-
really relevant.
I was, well,
Last thing, and then we're going to go on to the next one.
just to what Sharon was saying, I find myself processing stuff out loud. So Rob and I have back and forth many times, I'll start to say something and he'll want to fix it. And I'll be like, no, I'm just processing this out loud. So I would be talking if he was there or not. I would still be processing it out loud. So it's hard for him he's been practicing, he's gotten very good at it, to just listen. And the same thing is reversed. He'll do the same thing, and I'll want to solve his problem, and then I'll say, "Are you just talking, or do you want me to say anything?" Or sometimes he'll say, "I just need to talk about this. I want you to know it, but I don't want you to react to it, and I don't want you to try and fix it. I just want to say it." So sometimes I think
Yeah.
when there's stress,
And men want to fix.
yes.
Men want to fix.
I think when there's, like, for me, when I'm stressed about something, I will just pop off about it. Blah, blah, blah. And then I realize, okay, no, I don't need any help with this. I just needed to get that off my chest and then be able to move on. I used to have, my best friend used to be my boss, and I was working with her brother. And we sat right next to each other, and I would talk to him on the phone and hang up, and then I'd hang up the phone and go, "Oh my God, John wants me to," and she, so calm, and she'd look at me and she'd say, "Do you want me to fix it? Or are you just getting off your chest?"
Yeah.
Because another manager might just automatically go to John and berate him for how he talked to me, when in reality he was just doing his job and I was reacting poorly. So it was a really good learning experience at a young
Understanding
age
each other.
of understanding how my speech could get somebody to react when I didn't really want that.
It's almost like you're venting.
Yeah, totally. Are you venting, or do you want me to do something?
Kim, seeing you brought up about being in drama. This is undramatic material. This is how to create something. If your speech is creating drama, there's something for you to look at. If it's creating harmony and solutions and understanding, stay with that. That result is on the right track. I want to go to the next one. Right action. It's really interesting that the Buddha put right action in the presentation right next to right speech. Because if you want to be a reliable person, you say what you're going to do and then you do it. And so this fits beautifully in the progression of things, even though that 8-4 path merges around and it's not necessarily in order. This is to me is a really nice order. Right action, right deeds. To care for our actions, to not harm others, and to cultivate wholesomeness in ourselves. To care for our actions, to not harm others, and to cultivate wholesomeness in us. This is really tied to karma, another basic Buddhist concept. The law of cause and effect, rewards and consequences. The Buddha said, whatever you do, good or for evil, to that will you fall heir. That was his summary of karma. Whatever you do for good or for evil, to that you will fall heir. In other words, that will be your inheritance. So, if you're going to do right action, it's tied to these 5 precepts that are also a teaching of the Buddha. Honor life. Don't destroy life. Respect what is not yours. Don't take other people's stuff. This is right from the sandbox. Practice mutuality and shared power. It's more sandbox talk. Practice mutuality and shared power. And practice balance and moderation. Those are the 5 precepts said in a positive light. Thich Nhat Hanh put them in that way. Practice mutuality and shared power is virtuous and honest and is balanced and moderate, which goes back to the Goldilocks story. So if our actions are those, then I'm going to read this. The body of a wise person is different. They not only stay away from killing, stealing, and misconduct, but they use their bodies to help those in trouble, the sick, the disabled, the unfortunate. They lead a simple and wise life despite taking on responsibilities to assist family, friends, and community. It's very interesting. The body of a wise person is different. Even in their giving, they are energized. Not only are they not doing the negative things or falling into new bad habits, but their actions lead to the harmony of themselves, others, the community, family, all of those kind of things. Impulsive action rarely does this kind of stuff. Our impulses lead us to our bad habits, to our training, where we were trained wrong, or we were trained less productively. And so, when we practice these, it's like a dual dose. It's like a dual dose of medicine. First of all, we don't take the bad medicine, and we give and receive the good medicine. Goes back to the wolf story that we say way too many times. Feed the good wolf. Not only in your thoughts, but actually in your actions. The really interesting thing about the Buddha was he was not really actually lazy. And if you're around Buddhists, they're busy, active, energized people. They're working in the world. But that work is adding energy to the world and is contagious rather than impulsive. I think those of you who've had more of the experiences than I have with the Lama understand this. That the work that they continually do is contagious. But it's not impulsive. And so are actions. If you feel called to act, make sure that it comes from a thoughtful generosity rather than just an impulse. When we did about 4 months ago the refugees coming through Costa Rica talk with is there something we should do, or how should we think about this? And one of the most endearing conversations that I had about that was with Diana Smith, who's not here, but will be back next week. And she said to me, so are you going, after the talk, she said, so you go by Uvita in front of Bame where the migrants are. And I said, like, yeah. And she said, would you, if I were to bring something each week, would you bring it to them? Sure. And so every week she brought me a dozen hard-boiled eggs in 4 little baggies in a bag. I said, give this to 4 of the families. This is because she worked as a doctor in obesity. She understood all about nutrition. She's like, this is the best fast food we can give them. So that action led me to every time that I went in the store, I bought an extra little bag and gave it to somebody. That's the contagious part of right actions. When somebody else does something and you see it. And she was not asking to be honored or anything like that. And I was like, this is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. That contagiousness about actions really does change the world. I could tell you 100 stories about the Happiness Project that demonstrate that. And I bet you some of the things that others of you have been involved in the community, where one good deed leads to another good deed, leads to another good deed, and now you start rolling down the hill with something that's beautiful, harmonious, inspired. Our actions really do matter. What do you want to say about this? Yeah.
When you talk about being impulsive, I personally feel I do impulsively good things.
Okay.
Like I'll see somebody going down my road carrying an empty gas container.
Yeah.
I hit the brakes for, I don't even know the guy. I just get in.
Yeah.
He looks at me like, no, get in. Because I knew he's got to walk like 3 miles, and he's going to carry that full thing back.
Of course.
So I took him to the store, waited, and then took him back, took him home. So to me, impulsive seemed negative choices as being impulsive.
That's spontaneous.
Well,
No,
yeah.
seriously,
There you
that-
go.
there's a
I,
difference.
to me, that was
Yeah.
my word is that when I just stop and want to do something.
It really fits though with the idea that you have trained yourself through your previous actions and through your previous thinking. You have trained yourself into that thoughtful behavior, even though it's you're taking the stimulus of that moment and responding. I would call that responding rather than reacting.
Okay.
But you've trained yourself now with that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think you're right. I think you're using the wrong word.
Sure. I guess my perception of
You are caring that is
That word.
already within you. So when you see something that needs to be done, you're gonna do it.
thinking, to me that's
Right.
impulse. Like to me, I guess I'm assuming that's being impulsive in a good way.
I kind of like her word better.
Yes.
Spontaneous. What do you think?
Sure. Thanks.
Yeah.
I think it's like a random act of kindness, right? That has you had no payback from that. It's just
No.
a random thing that you do.
Yeah.
And you know what, it doesn't matter what
And
word
yet,
you
I,
use.
and yet I don't know that it's random for you.
Well, I know, but it's like this constant. Like, are you always doing random acts of kindness? So,
All of a sudden it's not
but
random
it's just random at that time, right? Like it's this automatic move. It's not a planned thing, and you're just a person that always does these things. But it's not planned. It's just it happens. It's spontaneous. I look at those things as this just happens in the moment, and you're a good person. So when you see that happen, you just do a good thing. You don't even think about it. It just rolls right off. Like I think that's I don't know if that's Buddhist, but I think that's a really good way to make good in the world. That's how I try to live my life too. So I don't think it's impulsive. I think it's just.
But you know what? You call it whatever.
Yeah.
Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Right?
We're often stuck on semantics here.
It's semantics.
Should you judge or should you discern? This is a big one that we always say.
So what is an example of impulsive?
Buying the Snickers bar at the cash
Pardon?
register.
Oh,
Buying the chocolate bar at the cash register.
Oh yeah, but I'm talking about as applies to this. Yeah,
Is
there
it
is.
impulsive if you do something but you don't follow through with it? Do you know what I mean? Is that, would you look at that as being impulsive?
Yeah.
I would say that it's when you do something and you don't think about it. You know, you're so automatic, you don't think about it. Right.
And
But
that,
that's
can
like
have,
this.
Lynn, don't you think
Yeah,
that
I mean,
could,
but we could
go ahead.
categorize that in a different way. What would you
Yeah.
What's an example of it? When he says that he thinks that's impulsive, and you're saying it's spontaneous, what is an impulsive action when you're doing this kind of stuff?
Throw garbage out the window of your car while you're driving.
What?
Oh,
I don't
know
want this in
what
my car,
impulsive
I'm just gonna
is,
throw it
but
away.
We were talking about don't do things impulsively for good actions.
Uh-huh.
So why am I, what's an
Yeah.
impulsive good action?
This would be impulsive.
If somebody,
No, a good action.
No, I mean, if somebody did that to you and you did it back, without even thinking.
She's saying good.
I'm saying good.
Oh, good, I'm sorry.
if
I
some,
don't think we're talking about impulsivity as it relates to good action.
That's one.
That was planned. That's impulsive. There's no place
Oh, I like that.
Is
I
it not
like
impulsive if you don't follow through with something? Like if you start with a really good intention, I'm going to do this, this, and this, but then that's impulsive. Like you don't think it through and then you stop.
Yeah, that can be the way that this stops. But you want to know? I think I wanted to highlight with those two differentiated terms how contagious it is to do upright actions. That one thing leads to another.
I wanted to go to that further. If somebody responded to you, if somebody attacked you verbally, angrily. So meant for anger is a hot one, where someone says something angrily and somebody comes back very angrily. Instead of, there are other choices that could de-escalate. That could try to calm the situation down and de-escalate. That would take a little bit of thinking and creating space and choosing a response.
Discipline.
So impulse would be that stimulus response like this instead of creating the space to respond. So anger is a common one.
But in both of these cases, we're talking about two polar opposite ends of the spectrum, right? Because on the one hand, when you look at the wheel and right, there's where does right spontaneity or right impulsivity, if that's even a word, fit into there versus it's good, bad, black, white, right, wrong.
Don't get caught up in the
Right.
semantics.
That's
because
right. That's it. So I think that's where Eric is struggling. When hearing, literally wrong, don't do that, and he's like, but okay, so wait, this is wrong. Leaves him to ponder. So semantics are important in these cases when we're doing these teachings.
Yeah, and there's differentiating here. Definitely been going on to separate them out.
Wait, do you feel better?
I'm good. I'm
Good.
just gonna keep doing it.
You do you, Eric. Yeah.
Mark, nobody gave him a hug.
It's because he gives hugs all the time.
All right, let's do the last one. Right vocation. This one is tricky because it was written in a time when there was some proscriptive things. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't be a butcher. Don't da 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 da. And so, how you make sense of that in the current day, I think, has a lot to do with the underlying reasons for our work. What's the flavor of our work? It's how you work rather than what you do. When you're in an upright spot, about livelihood, about vocation. How you work is much more important than what it specifically is that you do. So let me give you some ideas. The first one is that the work that you do is non-harming. That's for you to discern. Is this not only non-harming, but is it benefiting the common good? To practice right livelihood, one needs to find a way to earn your living without violating your ideas of love and compassion. Let me read that again. If you watch the video, this is where Ruthie last time said, read that one again. I'm going to say it again. Thank you, Ruthie. To practice right livelihood, one needs to find a way to earn your living without violating your ideals of love and compassion. This is, your work is an expression of your deeper self. There's a spiritualness to it, a calling. It's connected to your essence. It's connected to your personality. It's connected to your being. It's a spiritual vocation. There is a poster that says, if you love what you do, you will not work a day in your life. That's getting at the flavor of the wide direction that the Buddha was talking about. But it does also mean that you know when to work and when to stop working. I'm speaking to the Western world when I bring up this one. Very unclear when we stop working. You're challenged with that here. There's plenty of work to do. If you live on a property, you know how much work there is. Sharon, is there work here?
Mostly I love it though.
and so it doesn't feel, eventually some days it feels like work.
True.
But to know when to stop is about knowing when to sit and to be, rather than to do. Actually, to sit is to do. And in our Puritan Western ethic of work, it feels like for many of us, our training is that our work is never done. There's not enough hours in the day to do all the work we have to do. And our lists are endless in our head. And we want it to be perfect. And it's not. And so that idea about how you relax is crucial in finding the balance between working and the rest of non-working. It's a real challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lynn, go ahead.
Oh, there's just a saying that says, nobody on their deathbed said, I wish I worked more.
On my dad's grave, I told him I'm writing, he's going to be cremated, so I don't get to do this.
Like that
He worked. That's what I'm going to say. 7 to 83. He worked at a job. 7 to 83, so that's 76 years.
Jeez.
And when I said he worked, he goes, that's right. And I'm like,
Oh.
And so, you know, as a firstborn child, I'm a firstborn child, my son is a firstborn child, he was a firstborn child, my grandfather was a firstborn child. We were called to work and be responsible. It's one of the firstborn child kind of deals. And our challenge is to stop working. I don't know if you noticed this from the Ticos, but they know when to stop working.
Oh, yeah.
They got it. They got this down. They know when to stop. But they do work hard from 7 to 3 with the little breaks at the exact same right time.
At the exact time.
They do understand the flow of energy and life better than we often do.
So do cutter ants.
Is that right?
They just stop. They drop all their leaves
Yeah,
at 4 o'clock
right.
and they just stop.
They're done.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. I'll have to watch that sometime.
Happy hour.
It's 4 o'clock.
Well, you know, at their times they'll be in a line. They'll all have a leaf in their mouth and they'll just drop it and they'll just go on.
They come back for
Wait.
their last routine. They come back for it. I didn't know it was at a time. I thought it was sticking.
Some vocation is. What's your calling? I want to give an example first. I had an uncle who my dad viewed as lazy, his brother. Hi, Uncle Dave. Hope you get to watch it.
Oh,
He worked a job that was just hardly a thinking job. Went from 7 to 3. You could have been a Tico and you would have been really nice. Do you know why? Because he wanted to be the parent that was home when his kids came home from school. His kids adore him. I don't always agree with him about a whole bunch of things, but this thing, he knew his vocation. His vocation was the work of being a father. So the job was secondary. It was incidental, and he lived his vocation. Now, interestingly, his kids grew up and went away. So then, there's another. Then you find your next calling. He won't watch, so I don't think he did as well.
Right.
That was clear. That period of time was clear what his vocation was, what his priorities were, what he gave his energy to. It was his mission. And he found it. And when you do that, your life is so enriched and so does it spill out to others. When you just find what your job is,
But then when
some question marks, behind that. What are some of the rest of yours where you really actually know your vocation, what your calling is that fits with your deeper purpose? Yeah, Bert.
I worked in probably one of the most bureaucratic settings in the world that resisted innovation. I worked for the justice system.
Okay.
And so in any event, for me personally, I did what I could do, added as much creativity and change into that system. But I knew I was working towards living down here, living on our land in New Mexico, and that was my driving force, was to do good while I was working in that system. But I wasn't going to do life, and I wasn't going to make it my life.
Sure.
And
So that sounds balanced, Bert. That you're in a balanced view.
there were many times I didn't feel balanced. Where you're in opposition with people all the time. Conflict was a daily issue. And sometimes you handle it well,
Yeah.
sometimes you don't.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you. Somebody else.
For
vocation.
me,
Yeah,
it's
Lisa.
changed. So for a while, I worked in video and film production, and I was like, I am on the right path. It was really, I called my company Right Path Pictures because it was the calling at that time. But then life evolves, and then it changed, and then I ended up in healing and yoga and things like that, and that felt right in that time.
Mhm.
Now it's evolving again.
So in some ways, healthy people that do this across life continue to reinvent what their vocation is. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Because everything changes, right?
Everything changes, it's inevitable. Lynn, you want to add something?
Yeah, I want to say that sometimes we look at that livelihood thing and think there's some very obvious professions that look like their correct path, right, or something like that. But I think no matter what you do your values and morals permeate what you do and reflect what you do. So an example that I've seen in new companies, in the last 20 years is profit. So no matter what someone does, like Bomba socks, No matter what they do, does that, do businesses have to have a profit motivated thing, or is there another way to share, to generate income for themselves but share profits? So for them, every sock bought, a sock goes to homeless shelters.
Yeah.
You know, so do your values and morals permeate that no matter what you're doing?
My father worked for Dayton Hudson Corporation, which is now Target Corporation, and 10% of their profits went back to the community. And it was at every cash register when you did it, 10% of our profits will go back into community work. That was a vocational decision by the corporation. And so these are, it doesn't have to be specific, it's not what it is, it's how you do it.
Exactly. And I saw recently a listing of the top companies for profit margin, billions, like 200 billion, 300 billion profit margin. One was mentioned was Starbucks. It was like 240 billion profit. And if they gave their every single employee $11,000 a year raise, they would still earn 200 billion profits. I mean, so when you see stuff like that, and they don't even need to earn 200 billion, in my opinion. But you see what I mean? That small sharing, the divide between the rich and the poor is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is why, so there aren't values and morals permeating all over America or whatever.
This is something, there's a lot going wrong in the world.
Yeah.
But all of these undercurrents feel like they're within the range of the Buddhist teachings. All of the undercurrents, all of the flow underneath things are towards paying attention to these again. But it's a big world out there. Yeah. Wendy.
I remember years ago working in advertising, and I was good at it, and I liked it, but just getting up from my desk one day and looking around at everyone banging away in their cubicles on the computer, and it just came to me that, what is advertising? What is advertising? It's convincing people to buy something they don't really need. And I thought, I can't be part of this anymore. It just kind of hit me like, this is really not helping the world. It's not helping anybody. So I think what you said, like, we kind of evolved, but also how we reevaluate.
It's good. And it's good you came to that moment, isn't it? There are many people who never come to that moment, so that's really good, and you made a change.
But can I say something about that? I mean, I was in advertising for 10 years too, and my interest at that time, I had to pay bills, I had to pay rent.
Sure.
And I was good at it too, but I also agree with you that we were selling people, a box of goods that they probably didn't need. But when the reality came down to it, I didn't have a lot of money. I had to pay rent. I was independent.
Sure.
So I had to sell my soul. And to a certain extent, right?
I wonder though, Sandy, did you do your job in an ethical, skillful way?
I did, yeah.
That's what this is talking about. It's talking about that it doesn't have to be what it is or what the ultimate big result is. It's that your ethics, your values can be given in your portion of what you do.
Like the Nepali butcher.
The what?
Nepali butcher. So in Nepal, there's many Buddhists, and in town there's a person who's a butcher, but it violates right livelihood.
According to the old Buddhists.
Okay, yeah.
So, but there is nothing else to eat in the mountains. It's not like you go out and pick corn and you share it with your family. So mutton becomes one of the great staples of the community. And what everybody does is they recognize that this person is violating their tenet of right livelihood or right effort and things. But what they're actually doing is they're doing for the benefit of the community. And so that what everybody does is he's going to incur his karma, but everybody else prays on his behalf and gives him thanks to balance out that karmic debt. But he's doing it for the right reasons, even though he knows it's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, good analogy.
There's another side to this too, though.
Yeah.
The trap of having a livelihood that reflects you as a person is that livelihood becomes your identity. You have a business card saying what your identity is, and when you retire, you not only lose a place to go every day, but you lose who you are, and you have to redefine yourself. So, in answer to your question, my livelihood right now is finding out who I am, and there's no business card for that.
So many people struggle with that transition.
Yeah.
Retirement is a fearful thing.
Well, your retirement story,
I was asked, I retired 20 years
I was
ago.
asked. Get out.
And they asked me how long did it take for you to move into your new world. And I said, well, second cup of coffee.
14 after.
Yeah.
Well, these are all really good practical challenges, and this is the ethical section. This is the ethics section of the Eightfold Path, and so it really is where the rubber meets the road. But there's more to this than the superficial way of looking at these very three things about speech, about action, and about livelihood. And the challenge is to look at the underlying things that are connected with all this, the underlying causes, the intentions, your commitments, how your words affect the common good, how your listening affects the common good. Why do you do the work that you do? Is it important how I do this? Am I ethical? Am I skillful? Can I do it? And then do my actions reflect both me being actions that I've been trained in that don't work, actions that I could take now that are not skillful, or take the time to do the skillful things. I think that threefold thing over and over in this Eightfold Path is there. Renunciation, do no harm, do good. Over and over, that's the motif here. I hope it was helpful again to look at these. This is really practical, good discussion about it. And I take the middle bed.
Just right. Right.
Take the middle bed. Maybe there's the summary. Start with it, end with it. Mark, are you going to lead us in loving kindness?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that.
So just settling into our breath. And by settling into the breath, it just means that you're calming the mind. You just, if anything, just listen to my voice for a few moments as you just relax into metta. And I want to thank Jeff for today's talk, but also because it's the perfect introduction into right speech, right action, and right livelihood, metta. Because we're going to be saying something, and in so doing, we're going to be blessing or offering blessing. And that is right speech. It is well intended, and it is offered in a way that is respectful and just respectful, which creates a right action. If I'm willing to be this way, if I am the action of my speech, then that will hopefully, as Jeff was pointing out, that will encourage like-minded reactions. It'll encourage what metta is all intended for, which metta is intended for, which is the equanimity of everything. But the other thing too is it also creates right livelihood. If I'm going to be that thing that is speaking and offering that, I'm putting myself in a place of right livelihood. I'm being that divine light. And so the five people, of course, we know them for those that are new. The first one will be yourself. The second one will be somebody that you love. It's the first person that comes to your mind that you feel in your heart without judgment. Just that person you're going to offer metta to. The next person will be somebody that you may not know well. A lot of descriptions for that. Just somebody you don't know well that you would love to bless. The fourth person is somebody that you're in conflict with. And the fifth is the entire consciousness of the universe, of every living and sentient being. And so as we're in our breath and we settle in, you can repeat after me in your mind, or you can just let my words carry your expression for you. Seeing yourself sitting in front of you. Notice how calm you are in front of you, how relaxed you are. Notice the light of you looking at you. And to that part of you, you say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you be full of ease and grace in a state of equanimity. May you be happy. To that person that you love, see them before you, see their light as they look at you. And to them you say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you be full of ease and grace in a state of equanimity. May you be happy. To the person that you may not know well, perhaps not even know their name, but you see them all the same, they sit in front of you and you see their light as well. And to them you say, may you be well. May you be full of ease and grace and joy in a state of equanimity. May you be happy. And this is where right speech, right action, and right livelihood come together. To that person that you're in conflict with, see that. And again, see their light. They're just like you, exactly like you, just a little bit different. And to them you say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live in ease and grace, in a state of equanimity. And may you be happy. And if it calls to you, placing your hands on your heart, or if you like your heart open, you can leave it. Imagine the enormousness of every conscience in the entire universe, and your voice calling out to every sentient being, every life form, as you say, may you be well. May no harm come to you. May you live in ease and grace, in equanimity, a state of equanimity. May you be happy. And when you're ready, feel that's complete, you can release your hands.
So let's do our little benediction. It's up here. We say it together. Go in peace.
Go making peace, living gently, loving mightily, and bowing to the mysteries.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.